Warm greetings and welcome to today's 1 second. I have to...
I was busy with other things.
You are busy.
We're still long about catching is useless bomb flight, and there's no flights available.
Oh dear.
Today, tomorrow, we were trying to change to tomorrow. There's no flights.
Oh no.
Completely sold out.
Tomorrow no flights at all.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be joining, Pastor will be joining shortly. Just bear with us.
Where's my daughter?
Welcome. How is everyone doing today?
Jumoke,
Sir?
please give me 3 minutes or you can start.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Apologies for that slight distraction. We'll be getting started today. We have a special guest in the house, and he is a member of this house. I'm just going to turn off this echo here. And he's a man that needs no introduction. We're Pastor Tayo Fagbero. He's a member of the management or ALG's management board, and he's the director of our training. Pastor T, welcome today, and he's going to be taking us through the first of its kind Citizens Responsibility course under the School of Leadership and Governance. So this was a program that ALG rolled out in August, and our first cohort completed the course in September 19th. And we're very, very proud of the achievement and how engaged the participants were in this program. So Pastor T is really going to take us through the importance of citizens' responsibility, building up from the conversation last week. Mr. Suleiman really expressed the need for us to be engaged and the challenges in nation building or the progress and advancement of a nation if citizens are not well engaged. So Pastor T is really going to be taking us through that today. The greatness of a nation lies in the engagement of its citizens. So we welcome all of you here, and we have our graduates from CRC joining us today, and they'll also be chiming in as we move along. So thank you all for joining us. We're glad you're here, and there'll be more information on how to get engaged with ALG and all the initiatives that we have going on. So thank you and welcome. Good evening, everyone. Pastor T, welcome. I don't know if I should read your bio or the fact that you're director of training is enough introduction. He's the engine behind a lot of is the engine behind the curriculum of CRC and has really been instrumental in moving this forward. So thank you, Pastor T, for all your efforts, for all the work that you do, for getting us to this point.
Thank you all, and it's very excited, especially like as you rightly said, we have our first cohort of graduates of the Citizen Responsibility course powered by the School of Leadership and Governance, SOLAG. And there are 62 citizen corps who are bold, courageous, committed, and devoted to take on the challenge of the pathway to greatness for Nigeria. And that's what we're going to be discussing today, achieving greatness. How does a nation achieve greatness? And what is the value and role of citizens, in particular, looking at the responsibility of citizens in a nation's pathway to achieving greatness. Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope we would have a wonderful discussion. But more than that, that we would all have key takeaways, and we will not only take the words and the sharings today, but put them into practice, meditate upon them, and observe to do all that you know to do within your own strength. There's no little contribution. Every contribution matters, no matter how little it is, and all collectively we can make a change. I think there's a great future for Nigeria, and I believe that we can all participate in the pathway to building Nigeria into a great nation. Thank you, Sister Jumoke.
Thank you, sir. Are you ready for the slide?
Yes, I am ready. I'm ready. Well, and once Pastor come in, we can pause, but I am ready for the day.
Okay. So show of hands, how many of the CRC graduates are here?
Good,
Okay.
good.
We have quite a lot. Wow, okay. Wonderful. Okay. Counting, it's increasing. The number is increasing. Okay. All right. So I'll start sharing my screen for the presentation, Pastor T.
Yes, please.
Okay. And I would, and can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Ready when you are.
Okay, I am ready. I'm ready. Thank you once again, everybody, and welcome to our Nigeria Leadership Series. Today, we are going to be examining the pathway to greatness, Nigeria planning for greatness, the role and value of citizen responsibility. But I want to share a quote with you as we begin. And this quote is from Malala Yousafzai, which most of you may have heard from, a young girl who stood up to the challenges that girls were facing in the nation of Pakistan. And she had this to say, "I raise up my voice, not so I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. And as a citizen, I am bold enough, and we cannot succeed when half of us are held back, in particular in the education area." And this is what we're going to be examining today, the role of citizen responsibility. She mentioned the fact of raising her voice, not because she wants to shout, which means as a citizen, we have to lift up our voices, but because of those without a voice who cannot be heard. And we cannot succeed when we hold back. And so for you and I, as Nigerians, I think it is right time to act and not to hold back. And so we're going to be looking at that. Please, let's go to the first slide. A citizen's greatness is not defined by its geographical size or by the inhabitants or by how much or how many possessions in terms of landed area or in terms of assets that it has. And we're going to be looking at 12 C's that characterizes a citizen or a nation's greatness. 12 C's that characterizes a nation's greatness. Number one is character. Character counts. There's something coming up. Okay. Yes, character counts. And sometimes we have undermined the power of character. Character is exactly who we are. What is Nigeria's character? As a Nigerian, what is our character? It is very important that as we go from after 63 years of independence, that we define and craft out what a character of a Nigerian is. If you go around the world, it is being said that we have Nigerians all over the nations of the world. On almost about 180 or more than 180 nations, you will find a Nigerian. But if you pattern their characters, or if you map the trajectory of their characters, you will not find a uniformed or certain key core values that are aligned with each of those characters. So we have a diffused character as Nigerians, and this must change if we're going to achieve greatness. So that is number one. Number two is convictions. Convictions. And convictions aligns with core values. We must define certain national core values that we all, both citizens, leaders, elected officials, public servants, leaders, corporate leaders, must embrace, adopt, and live by. That is when then we know that we are building the foundation for greatness. Greatness rests on character and convictions. That is, values that cannot be compromised, values that cannot be changed. They are timeless, universal values that we must define as a nation that will guide us those of us that are living, and when the newborn come into the nation as citizens, they know about these convictions and core values. Number 3 is courage. Nothing great is achieved without courage. And courage does not mean we will not have certain fears or frailties or situations or challenges, but it means confidence in the face of crisis, confidence in the face of challenges. And we need courage in the times that we live in. My very good example of courage is to look at what is happening in the nation of Ukraine. We have seen a courageous leader who has defied all odds against every attack he has. And we need such courageous leaders in Nigeria, not leaders who will lead us to the end of a point and will not take us over the heap. We need leaders who will take us across, over, and above any challenge and situation. Commitment. I think a survey was done about 5 years ago about the level of commitment in the Nigerian space, particularly within our young, growing generation. And it was found that there is only about 30% who are committed to a particular cause for longer than a year or a year and a half, 18 months. That means we have a very low commitment. And it's not only with the young generation, we also have it within the older generation. There's not sufficient and adequate commitment to a particular course of action. We see that in our government. They initiate a plan, they develop a plan, they spend all money with all groups of stakeholders' inputs, and that plan is put on the shelf. There is no commitment to see through a particular plan. Another administration comes in and devises another plan. Someone actually said, one of our thought leaders mentioned that Nigeria has more plans than any nation in Africa and has more policies that are not even known to those that are affected by those policies all over the place. And so this must change. In our planning to achieve greatness and in our pathway to greatness, we must ensure that there is commitment to a particular cause and plan that has been thoughtfully and purposefully designed with all stakeholders' interest. We cannot be abandoning one plan after the other and think we would achieve greatness. Number 4, compassion. We must have compassion for those who are vulnerable and for different people groups. One of the challenges we have, and we've had some speakers, some of our dialogue and discourse on the Nigeria Leadership Series, where people have asked questions about what is government's commitment to those who are disabled, the disability. What is their commitment in education, in health, and giving them the opportunity to enjoy the same full potential and full access to the things you and I enjoy. So we must have compassion. We must be moved by compassion in order to achieve greatness. Next, competencies. You can see that before we talk about competencies, we have talked about character, convictions, courage, commitment, and compassion. And that also guides us in the choice of our leaders. We must not choose leaders with competencies as our first consideration. We must look at the character. We must look at their convictions. Do they live by certain convictions, core values, or do they compromise core values and convictions that will guide us to the end or to the journey of greatness? We must look at leaders who are courageous enough to be able to withstand whatever attack, challenges, or situations or crises that may arise. And then we must look for leaders who are committed on a long haul, who are committed to the service of the people. The essence of leadership is servanthood, is serving the people, is not serving any personal interest or building any kingdom on personal basis. So before competencies, we have character, convictions, courage, commitment, and compassion. 5 key qualities that every citizen of Nigeria must exhibit, in particular those that are in leadership. Then we talk about competencies, and competencies are diverse. We must look for a network of competencies that fit a particular ministry, department, or agency. We're finding wrong people put in right places. And that wouldn't lead us to greatness. That is actually wrong planning. So we must look at people with definite, distinctive competencies that are relevant and appropriate for particular places and positions and issues. And we have them. We have them all over the world. We have Nigerians with skilled competencies, both at home and in diaspora, who can fit into places. And so there must be a system of identifying the talents and the competencies that are needed for particular functions of government, for particular institutions of government, for particular causes that government aims to pursue and address in order to lead Nigeria onto the pathway of greatness. Then challenges. Actually, we must see challenges as opportunities for growth and development. And one of the challenges we actually have in Nigeria is the challenge of complaining about challenges. Challenges are pathways to greatness. In fact, in the Chinese vocabulary, there's nothing like crises or challenges. It is perceived as opportunities for change and opportunities for growth and development. And I think as Nigerians, as we pursue the pathway to greatness, we must begin to embrace and see challenges, not as opportunities to complain, but as opportunities to grow and learn and to change. Change is the only thing that is constant. We must be open to change. We must be willing to adapt change. And in order to embrace and work in change, we must also be willing to endure some pain. There's no enjoyment without endurance. So challenges, we must all embrace challenges, both as citizens and as leaders. Collaborations. It is often said that no one tree makes a forest, which means we must work together. We must collaborate from the rural communities to the urban communities to solve the problems that are plaguing Nigeria at different levels. There must be internal collaborations. There must be cross collaborations between ministries, departments, and agencies, institutions of higher learning, corporate organizations, in order for us to pursue the pathway of achieving greatness as a nation. We must also have regional collaborations. We must have global collaborations. And in fact, that is why the United Nations has identified as the 17th goal, partnership. Partnership is key onto the way to greatness. Next, we must have consistency of good and right values. Consistency of good and right values and actions of people with quality and implementation of ideas. There are so many ideas, creative ideas that have been flowing in Nigeria in the last decades, but nothing is done with them. We are very inadequate in our implementation process. We are not even consistent about keeping our convictions or core values. And so in order for us to achieve greatness as a nation, we must commit to consistency of good and right. And those two words are very key, good and right, values and actions that will ensure quality and implementation of ideas. Now, citizens, that's the next C, and that's where you and I fit in also. We must ensure that we understand that as citizens, we have a role to play. You know, most of the sharings we've been hearing in the last 2 or 3 years has been talking about lack of leadership. That is true. We have lack of effective and right, ethical, accountable leadership in Nigeria. But also we need right followership. We need citizens who are citizen leaders, who are able to influence others into purposeful actions in order to bring about change. You don't have to wait until you get into a position of elected position or position of authority to bring about change. Change comes in incremental levels, and it requires citizens who understand that they are citizen leaders with an influence in a particular space of life and can contribute to bring about change and are passionate about seeing that change come to pass. Next, we must communicate. Government must communicate all their activities with the citizens. Citizens also must respond. Communication is two-way. We must always give feedback, but we're too passive in our communication as citizens. And one of the things that we taught at the Citizen Responsibility course, is how to engage our elected officials. We cannot just be silent. They can speak to us, they speak through the media, they speak through circulars and issues and laws that they make. And as our last speaker said, Mr. Suleiman, it was very surprising that he said he woke up and there had been some laws that have been adopted or legislated that would affect his business, and he was not aware of it. There must be effective communication of laws, procedures, protocols of what government is doing, and we must also respond. We must give feedback to what we don't like, to what we like, to our concerns, to our likes, to our interests and aspirations. In fact, we must know that those that are elected to official positions are to serve us. And therefore, there must be effective communication from them to us and feedback from us back to them. And lastly, creativity. We're living in a world of consistent and constant changes. And so we must yield to creativity. And we find this at all levels of and all ages. There's creativity flowing. In fact, we human beings are the one that is endowed with the power to create. God is the creator, and he put in each human being the seed of creativity, the ability to create, to craft a new thing, to bring out something from an old thing, to make a change in a place, in an environment, or in a cause or issue. And so these are 12 characteristics, or what you can call 12 attributes of what will lead us, will form the foundation to a great nation. And we must give attention to this. This is not only at the federal level, it must be at all levels. It must be at educational institutions. It must be adopted and understood at corporate level also. I have a quote here. It says, a culture of governance. The greatness of a nation is rooted in a culture of governance based on innovative and sustainable public policies and practices driven by its citizens, or driven by citizens' engagement and inspired by the principles of transparency, accountability, participation, and fosters inclusive growth and development. Now, another way to look at the greatness of a nation is to look at the 5 P's of sustainable development. Next slide, please. To look at the 5 P's of sustainable development. And these 5 P's are people. And this is where we are, all people, all citizens. There is no one that lacks potential. Every citizen, everyone born and created by God has a potential. And that potential, we must discover, each one of us must discover our potential. We must define the potential, and we must deploy the potential. But then government must give the opportunity or create an environment where human potential can be unleashed. And so number 1 P, as defined by sustainable development, is to ensure that all people fulfill their potential in dignity and equality in a healthy environment. Number 2 is planet. And we know what is trending about climate change. We must protect our planet. And it starts from home. It starts from the home to the schools and then to the public places and to communities. We must protect our planet from degradation. We must ensure there's sustainable consumption, and actually that should be production. Consumption and production. We're too much on the consumption side and very little on the production side. So we're calling all governments and all actors to ensure that we increase our productivity far beyond what our consumption level is. The next P, and we talked about that in our last NLS last Thursday, prosperity. We must ensure that all human beings can enjoy a prosperous and fulfilling life, and that economic, social, and technological progress occurs at all levels of government, at all levels of society as we look at it. In fact, one of my acronyms for prosperity is SPIES. We must ensure that each individual has a spiritual development depending upon where their faith is, must have physical development, intellectual development or mental development, emotional development, and social development in order to enhance the prosperity of that individual. Next is peace. There is no development without peace. We must ensure peaceful, just, and inclusive society which is free from fear and violence, fear of challenging government, fear of speaking up or saying something when you see something that is not right or that does not align with values that will bring us to a place of greatness. And that is very important. And lastly, partnership. We must ensure that we mobilize the support and resources of others, both internally, externally, focused on particular needs of the poorest and most vulnerable, not focused on particular needs of those that are in leadership, but of the poorest and vulnerable. When we build the bottom of the pyramid, we are certain that as the bottom of the pyramid is built, it grows. And as it grows, everybody benefits, everybody wins. And now we come to an acronym that defines greatness. G is for open government. We must have an open government. And we had one of our thought leader, Umaru Yakub, who shared with us from Center for Fiscal Integrity, I think for Transparency and Fiscal Integrity. We must have open government. Open government means that we must have the right to information. We must have access to documents and particular protocols and guidelines and policies the government is enacting. In fact, open government demands that we participate in every policy decision making by gathering the inputs of citizens, people groups, advocacy groups, and stakeholders. And then legislators can then sit and gather these inputs together collectively and begin to look at where the weight of the burden of the issue is. But policies are being made in Nigeria without adequate and sufficient engagement of the citizens and of participant stakeholders. So G stands for open government. R stands for citizen responsibility. We must be responsible for our actions, our communications, and we must also show responsibility for the assets that we have within the nation. E stands for citizen and leadership education. One of the greatest assets that we have is to establish quality education. Today, Nigeria has lost that. We have over 20 million out of school children. We have educational facilities that are deteriorating every day. And yet, we have commissioners for education on the state level. We have ministers of education on the federal level. We have higher education institutions going on strike. And then we don't have insufficient materials, equipment, and resources to enhance the quality of education. We don't even meet the lowest, we're in the lowest cadre of the Global Program for Education Index. And if you look at so many of the indices, including the Human Development Index, the Corruption Index, the Open Government Index, Nigeria falls in the lower cases or in the lower groups. And the challenge for me is that we don't see government share with us how they will move us from this baseline of low indices to a higher indices. They tell us in general terms what they will do. We're going to raise or we're going to mobilize or provide 50 million jobs for youth. How are you going to do that? From what level are we moving on to move to 50 million? Over what period of time? There must be openness and there must be granularization of issues and ideas in order to enhance citizens' responsibility reaction. So citizen and leadership education is important. We have to educate our local government officials about citizen engagement, public consultation before decisions are made that influence and impact the lives of the citizens in the communities which they live. We must have, A stands for citizen and leadership accountability. Not only that the leaders must be held accountable, as citizens, we must also be accountable. And citizen accountability means we must pay our tithes. I said tithes. We must pay our taxes. As Christian citizens, we also must pay our tithes in good time. We must pay our taxes on good time in order for government to have the resources to be able to respond to the needs and the aspirations of the people. We must have data transparency. We must ensure that we have all data provided on projects, on policies, on programs, on issues that relate to national development. We must have an open data platform where any citizen can go into and access any data that they require in order to make certain decisions, or just for the sake of knowing, in order that they may be able to exercise oversight over certain issues and concerns of the government. We must have institutional and organizational networking. We have federal ministries, departments, and agencies that don't work together. They don't collaborate. There's no cross relationship sufficient enough to bring about change. In fact, there is duplication of activities and efforts, and we have a spread. And that's why the cost of governance is high in Nigeria than even most developed countries. Next, we must have community empowerment. We must realize that nothing grows big until it is planted. And that is the principle of the seed. We must understand that planting our communities and planning our communities well to develop sustainably and environmentally in an environmental way will enhance the total national development of the country. But we have neglected our rural communities, and therefore we have a high migration from the rural communities to urban cities. And this must change. Community empowerment is a great key and foundation critical to the nation's greatness and development. Now we must also ensure effective delivery of services. And we're talking about public services. We must have effective delivery of public services, right services at the right time, at the right cost. And this also implies that there must be proper analysis, proper cost-benefit analysis in determining the price and the cost of services that are provided to citizens. Lastly, we must ensure that we adopt, embrace, and work in servant leadership, both at citizen level and at leadership level. In fact, from my own faith, it says, if any man wishes to be great, let him be the servant of all. Next slide, please. There are other elements that allow us to pursue or plan for greatness. They include vision. Without vision, a people perish. Without vision, we can be restrained. We need a vision. What is our leadership's vision? Federal leadership's vision, presidential vision for Nigeria. It must be shared with us. We must know and we must buy into that vision. What is the state government's, what are the state government's visions for each state? What are the local government's vision for the local areas for which they are responsible? We must ask this question. The vision must be clear to us. There must be clarity of vision. Without clarity of vision, then there will be wasteful of resources. And not only that, it fuels corruption, inefficiency, ineffectiveness, and it leads to citizens' distrust in government. So we must have vision. A nation's greatness begins with a clear and compelling vision. The vision should be inclusive. It should be forward-looking. And I can go back, I went back to do research, looking at the National Vision 2020 that was done, a wonderful, thorough document, but was abandoned in its implementation. We must carry and pursue the vision forward. It is not only good or sufficient enough to have a vision. We must write down the vision, make it plain, so that each person would know its contribution to enhancing the vision, both as individual citizens, as corporate citizens, as community citizens, as faith-based citizens. We must know what our contribution is to the vision of making Nigeria a great nation. Education. Education is the cornerstone of a great nation. It empowers individuals, fosters innovation, and drives economic growth. We must place emphasis. In actual fact, we do not meet the benchmark of the percentage of GDP that is supposed to be invested in education. In the last 6 years or more than that, Nigeria has not met that benchmark goal. We know these benchmarks, but every year we continue to move and plan and spend a lot on education without achieving the rate of the ratio of percentage of our GDP that is expected, which is just the foundation. How much more increasing it to be able to have a better and quality education. We must make strong emphasis on STEM. science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that is the way of the new future for nations. Infrastructure. We must have a robust infrastructure if we are going to be considered a nation that is great. Infrastructure, we must have road networks. We must have transportation networks that enhance effective commercial activities. We still lack that. And every government comes in and promises us that we would have a redevelopment, growth, and changes in our infrastructure, and yet we don't. In actual fact, we have a national infrastructure development plan. I'm sure some of you have seen it. That is just sitting on the shelf. It's been developed over the last 2 years and 3 years with a lot of stakeholder inputs, a lot of investment and resources, but the implementation is lacking. So we must have infrastructure. They're crucial for our growth and prosperity. We must have digital infrastructure that must reach every area and every part of the nation. Economy. A strong economy is vital for nation's greatness. We must foster economic development that is right from the grassroots. It must be from bottom up. We must look at community economic development, community micro ventures that can provide goods and services that community population needs, and also the surrounding communities then benefit from that, bringing about increase in economic growth. We must look at our industrialization. We must look at micro industries in order for us to pursue a right pathway to greatness. Healthcare. Another place where we are falling greatly short is healthcare. Nigeria has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, not just in Africa, in the world. In actual fact, over 260,000 children die every year in Nigeria. And yet we have not seen it as critical and essential. I believe as citizens, we must rise up and challenge this situation. In Liberia, for example, a program was done when they had Mrs. Johnson as the president of Liberia with the community health workers. They trained community health workers who were on subsidy and volunteering and spread throughout the nation when the Ebola crisis came. And from then on, they have built a workforce, an army of community health workers, so that those that are in the rural places can access healthcare in a timely manner. Nigeria is still lacking behind. And we have the population. We have a youth population that are unemployed that can be empowered in community health training, and then they can graduate from community health training to higher levels of healthcare profession, and then build us a healthcare workforce that can sustain the population that we have. We need quality healthcare, and it's a fundamental right of every citizen. We're also falling short in the percentage of GDP that we must spend on the healthcare sector. The environment, there's a lot of environment pollution. Those are part of key elements that we must consider. And as citizens, as you look at what is in your heart, what are you passionate about? What are you concerned about? John Maxwell always says, what you cry about is an indication to what you may be called to do. So as citizens, it's our responsibility to look at these needs and to look at where you are passionate, where you are concerned, and then influence other citizens and mobilize a citizen group to consider what can be done to bring about change. Citizens' responsibility. I want to also use the word responsibility to define what our responsibilities must be. R stands for respect for others. We must respect one another. We may not agree, but there must be respect. We must teach respect to our children. We must teach respect to our youth, not just demand it, but we must also respond. We must respect each other. Age is no, we must understand that respect cuts across all ages. The older must respect the younger must respect the older. We must have respect for rule of law. And that means at all levels of citizenship, the rule of law must be appropriately enacted and utilized. We must ensure that we have awareness of issues. Education, not education for acquiring knowledge, but education about issues that are particular to the community which you belong to. You are a citizen of the nation. You are a citizen of the community which you belong to. You are a citizen of your workplace. You are a citizen of your faith environment, whatever level or your type of faith. So you operate in this, and then you are a citizen of your family. You operate in these spaces, and so you must be educated about the issues that concern your city as a citizen which you belong to, that concerns the country which you belong to, that concerns the community, the neighborhood which you belong to, and then, of course, your space, your faith space area. Education, awareness of issues. S stands for sensitivity to the needs of the vulnerable. Someone said, if we don't pay particular attention to the needs of the vulnerable, then what would happen is that we will be losing the quality of life that we have when the vulnerable grow beyond a particular population that overwhelms the nation. We must pay particular attention to the needs of vulnerable and marginalized groups. Next, we must participate in political process. I think the last election has taught us a lesson that political participation is critical for achieving the best election outcomes. And one of the things we have learned in the course is that we must register to become part of political parties. The choice is yours. Nobody will tell you what political party to join, but you and I must be represented in political parties. That is the first level of decision-making in political appointments and political elected positions. And when we are not there, like someone said, if we are not at the table, we'll be on the menu. So we must participate in political process. Next, O stands for organization. Organization, we must organize ourselves. Organization is very important. We cannot be disorganized in trying to solve a cause or challenge government. We must organize ourselves into organized citizens groups with particular cause, purpose, and definite action plans. Next, network. We must network with community holders, in particular, those that are beneficiaries or those that are affected by the issue or the causes that we want to pursue. S stands for stewardship and service. Service and stewardship of resources. It has been said that in every of the 36 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, we have mineral resources. In actual fact, there's a study that tells us that we have over 44 mineral resources that are underdeveloped. And so it is important for us to engage communities where those resources are and begin to mobilize investments to ensure the proper development of those resources, the proper management, which is stewardship of those resources, and the earnings of those resources in order to build and develop the nation. Next, we must have integrity at all levels. We cannot overemphasize the place of integrity. We must be people of integrity. Ethics. I just understood just about 3 weeks ago, somebody told me that we have a national ethics policy. I'm sure most of you don't know about that policy. We have a national ethics policy that is written and it's put and well documented, but is not well applied. It's not well implemented. And so we have people acting in whatever manner, in whatever way they want. We must pursue integrity at all levels. We must be bold to speak truth to power. I think one of the passion for the President of African Leadership is that we build a citizen corps, a citizen leadership army that are bold to speak truth to power, because it's only by speaking truth that we can be set free to achieve our full potential, not only as individual citizens, but as citizens of Nigeria. We must have innovation. We cannot continue to use old methods of running government. That we must have creativity and innovation. We must invest in innovation in order for us to be effective and efficient in public service delivery. Next, leadership engagement and evaluation. We don't have sufficient and adequate leadership engagement. And then we have little leadership evaluation. We must evaluate our leaders. not when it comes to election time. We must evaluate them periodically, and we must be able to speak out who is performing and who is not performing. And we must share this with the whole community of citizens at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. We must be upfront in evaluating the performance of our leaders. And one of our vice president, Pastor Sonny, is very passionate about this. In actual fact, I think there's a report that just came out by an organization showing us different state performance evaluation in terms of business enabling environment, in terms of leadership capacity in that state. As a citizen, it's our responsibility to evaluate the performance of those who serve us. And if they don't measure up to the level of performance when it comes to voting time, election time, then we can act appropriately. We must be transparent. We talked about transparency. And lastly, the why there of the value and importance of citizen responsibility is yield and years. Our last speaker at the NLS taught us about the price of time and the price of sacrifice. And so we must not expect things as quickly as it is. Like we know the adage says, Rome was not built in a day. It takes years, and we must be patient with one another. We must be patient with government that is responsible, that is ethical, that is accountable, and that are servant leaders. But we must have impatience with those that are not responsible, that are not ethical. We cannot continue to tolerate irresponsibility and lack of ethics on the basis that, well, we're just 63 years old and it took America several hundreds of years. That is not a sufficient excuse. It's not a valid excuse. We'll be patient with growth from leaders that are responsible, ethical, accountable, and who are actually servant leaders, and impatient with those who are not.
Reverend, let me interrupt you a little bit there, because you have really loaded us with a lot of information, and we will need to. I hope the slides will be available for a lot of us and all that. But what is really uppermost in my mind and what is bothering me is a process by which we can get people in Nigeria to do all these things that we are discussing and that we need to do. To be honest, it's not that people will lack this information in one coloration or the other, or even in somebody's desk or the other, or in some people's laptops. You might call them different names, but we've had them from time immemorial. Why have we not been able to implement them? Why have we not been able to gather ourselves together to truly form a nation? Why have we not been able to do all these things? And then finally, how are we going to get Nigerians to do all the things we need to do going forward?
All right. Thank you so much, Pastor. You asked the question, why we have not been able to do it is there's a difference between being, and I said it, I think my mother said this to me, that there's a difference between being educated and being learned. Yes, you are right. Most of us probably know this thing, but we don't apply it. There's a difference between having knowledge and wisdom. I think we lack the boldness and the strength of a character and conscience to apply the things we know. And if we've been applying the things we know, there would have been incremental changes. We have been a passive nation for years, passive citizenry. Even in the church, people don't speak out their minds. They believe that if you speak out your mind, you are being disrespectful. That is not true. You can speak out your mind in a very respectful way in order to bring about change. We can challenge things, but to your question of why, we have been passive. And one of the things I have laid out here is how to be a responsible citizen first in your community. We must start from the community base, your neighborhood. You know, we drive around our neighborhood in very wonderful cars and not being bothered about the environmental pollution there. And all it takes is for an individual. I just shared the statement by Malala Yousafzai, the young girl in Pakistan who rose up against all attacks against young girls going to school. We must, I think, Pastor, what is missing is individual responsibility and then collective responsibility. You know, I used to tell a story of my experience coming back to Nigeria and doing a project, and I was at the Intercontinental Hotel. And the day it rained, there was a day it rained, and the whole streets were flooded. And I looked at the buildings and the corporations that are on that street, and I saw the lack of responsibility, lack of collective responsibility. They thought it is the government's responsibility. Yes, even if it's government's responsibility and they don't do it, I think we need to put less emphasis on blaming the government, but start individually and collectively to be responsible from our community space, corporate responsibility in your own environment. Now, to the question of what we must actually do, I think first of all is to reorient, and you've said it a lot, is to reorient ourselves, reorientation of the Nigerian populace. And that's the reason for this citizens' responsibility course. And we're taking it to every level. We've had the first cohort group, we're looking at the youth level, we're looking at how to integrate not just general civic education, but citizen responsibility that deals with issues that we've just discussed. And so that is our pathway, and I think we can do it. I don't know if that answers your questions, Pastor.
Do you think it's just enough to do a citizens' responsibility course and just reorientate ourselves, and that will bring about all the solution to everything that Nigeria is going through at this point in time?
There are still other elements. There are the elements of now acting and developing innovative solutions at the community level. Let me read a story that relates to what you've just said, that beyond being educated, there's need for education, there's need for enlightenment, and then empowerment, then execution. If we have the first three E's and we don't execute, that means if we don't identify particular needs at different levels, at community levels, and mobilize concerned citizens who have passion and vision and who have character and who are willing to commit on the long haul, what happens is that we gather a group of people together. They start with, so much ignition, fire, and passion, and then they fizzle out. Why? Because of the level of individual commitment. And so we must find those who are willing to be committed for the long haul. And I'm sure, Pastor, you have seen this. There's a story from the nation of Colombia that talks about three young men, ages 18, 21, and 22, who saw that there was no water in the village they were living in. And most of the village population were farmers. And so what did they do? These three young men went to the local government there to request that they dig a dry river, that they channel a river to carry water through the tunnel, not only to feed the crops of the farmers, but then to create a tank, a storage for water storage for household water. It took them 19 months of continuous, persistent persuasion to the local government, and then the local government responded to them. Pastor, what is missing with us in Nigeria is persistence, commitment, and the long haul conviction that we must not give up. I think we give up easily. We finished 2023 elections, and yet we're still talking about the problems and issues of 2023 elections, rather than start looking at how to take what is there now. We have a government there now. An 8-point agenda has been put out by the president. Nobody has asked questions about this 8-point agenda. We haven't seen people challenge this 8-point agenda. How will this 8-point agenda developed? And that is what is lacking. We must be courageous enough. We must be bold enough. And that's what we're doing at ALG, and particularly starting from the citizen responsibility course, and then gathering together a network of citizen core, people that are committed to see change both at the community, state, and federal level.
Yeah, I've heard you and I hear you very well. But from my own experience, one of the challenges of Nigeria is who will bail the cat, who will take that risk. You know, I had a friend that says that who's going to bail the cat? The person they use his head to crack the coconut does not
Yes.
eat the coconut because he'll be having a splitting headache and others will be eating the coconut. I think that is the story of Nigeria. Who will bail the cat? Who will take on this responsibility? Who will drive Nigeria forward? What do we do? Or what can we at ALG do? What can we as citizens do to try and drive this thing forward? And then I don't know how much longer you have in your presentation because there's quite a few hands up.
No, we
wanting
can
to
take
make-
questions. Pastor, that's fine. I think you are asking the right questions. The presentation will enlighten, but I can always respond to questions and which will bring us. But you're talking about who will bail the cat. And
Yes.
you know, I just mentioned the case of Malala. I mean, Pastor, like you rightly said, I think the challenge with us as Nigerians is the price of sacrifice. I think
Yeah.
Mr. Suleiman mentioned that. Who is going to sacrifice? If we don't pay that price, then we are not, it means we are not ready for what we desire. There's always a price, whether at individual, corporate, community level, at whatever level you think of. If you want something so bad, you must be willing to pay the cost and the price of that which you want. And I think we haven't even defined what it will cost us in certain sectors of the society. For example, I talked about the maternal mortality rate. I don't think that has much in terms of cost, but it needs, we need a minister of health that is committed and passionate, that understands the issues. I talked about not having the right kind of competencies in the right places. That's another challenge we have. And we must address that, like you rightly said, by building a pipeline of new generation leaders who understand what leadership is and who are willing to practice what is servant leadership.
All right, very good. Let me take Dr. Nwakwesi. She has a comment, and then Samuel Dada.
And we have a couple of, Mr. President, we have a couple of students, graduates from CRC also that want to just speak about what they have learned from CRC and how they are using it. How it has inspired them to get involved in nation building. So maybe after you take those two, we can have some of them speak. Because to your point, who will bail the cat, right? And so some people are rising up and taking on the challenges. So there are some initiatives that have come up that they can also speak about on how they are getting engaged and involved.
All right, we'll take 3 questions. Professor Green has just put up her hands. And then we'll then take the CRC and comments. Okay, Dr. Nwakwesi, please, very quickly, straight to the point so that you can respond.
Everyone, Reverend, your conversation this evening is something that I'm very passionate about. And I'm just going to take myself to give an example of what you're talking about. In my younger years, I was looking for money, building my career, and I was not proactive about my health. And I started having health issues. At that time, I was mostly interested in business. If you gave me time, I could take it. And what has happened is that challenge gave me an opportunity to find a lifestyle. At that time, I was just a churchgoer. I was just reading the Bible. But as soon as I left the church, the worrying habit, the negative mindset engulfed me, and I was not really a happy person. People would say to me, and see, because you look amazing. Internally, I was literally dying. And at that time, I didn't have convictions of passion and empathy and compassion for society. What has happened is that I've met a lifestyle I call the integrative lifestyle. That's what I live. And today at 70, my convictions are different, more compassionate and more accommodating of people. So what we do in this society is to start from childhood to teach our children the growth mindset. That is what is happening in Japan. There's something called Kaizen in Japan. Every day they are improving the calibers of who they are. Continuous and consistent self-improvement. You become somebody that is living with higher ideals. So character, compassion, integrity become a way of life for you. And I think that the churches also have a role to play. Our churches are not preaching balanced living. They're focusing too much on on the spiritual, forgetting that the human being is spirit, mind, body, their relationship, their financial challenges. We need to teach people how to balance all those areas of their life so that they can come out and be the masterpiece that God has ordained them to be. That's just my contribution. But a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And definitely, I would love to actually connect with you for more conversations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. Again,
No
that
problem.
emphasis on changing the growth mindset, instilling growth mindset. But let me just respond quickly. Also, it is important that, just like Pastor, you are asking, that we foster the establishment of national core values. National core values. We must gather together stakeholders, and I think we have begun that. We've done some surveys to ask citizens about what must be our convictions as a country, as a citizen. And so once we do that, then we start training the children. And once we inculcate the national values into them, and they know how to think, like one of our educational thought leaders told us, that they must know how to read, write, and think. Think good and think right. So that's, thank you for that contribution. Next question.
All right, Samuel Dada, please.
Okay, good morning, sirs. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for your submission. You really helped me to not to lose focus, because I won't lie to you, sir. I'm a young man in my middle 40s, and I've been, from my childhood, I've been working vigorously in my community. I believe in a community responsibility in how to build a nation. But I've seen so far, like on the 13th of January, I was on this platform, Baba Obasanjo came. I had some questions. And I was never rude to Baba Obasanjo, but if you should go and look at that video, even some people cut it out for me and they said it to me. I listened to myself again. And I thought that Baba was so angry. Let me speak to that Dada. I think, a lot of things, I was like, just a simple question, sir, of what he did, not that Erez says, not that I'm making it up. But sir, you are saying something that we need to ask questions. We need to ask in a polite way. In which, sir, I will tell you that Nigeria, or maybe in Yoruba, I don't know, it's a place where you can't question your leaders. It's giving me headache every day. When you are submitting that we are not building people that has courage, people that has this, we have them. Omoyele Sowore is one of it. How many people loves him in Nigeria because of his boldness, courageousness, and every other thing? They don't want to deal with such person because they will tell you it's radical, and that is not radical. We need to ask questions. This is how these countries where we run to America, Europeans, where people ask questions, they criticize one another to build a nation. But in our own land, we don't do that. Even though you try to prostrate and tell them, they will still make you to feel that you are rude in conversing or asking questions. Because when I listened to you, I was like, the same thing you are saying, I'm lying in asking questions. Go and search for it, sir. 13th of January this year. Baba was so uncomfortable with my stone. It was like as if I was sounding rude to him. This is the problem. So how many youth want to come out again and want to take things up? No, that is why you see most of our younger generations, they don't want to involve in politics. I'll be on Twitter space, I'll be telling them that politics determines everything about you. Your children are going to kindergarten. The rules and regulations of those creches and schools or nursery schools that we apply comes from the Constitution. You mentioned about ethics before, the national ethics. How many people are following? How many people knows all those things? Because they just want to subject people to poverty thinking minded people.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dada. Professor Green.
This kind of mindset, because I don't really blame the followers. I blame the leadership. Because the moment we have leadership, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome, man.
Thank you, Pastor T. Thank you so much, my teacher. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, well, I wasn't going to say much, but when you were mentioning healthcare, when you were talking about maternal mortality and all that, I wanted to tell you that the problem with maternal mortality today and child mortality. It's not that we don't know what to do. And it's not that we have not had leaders who knew what to do. It's not that we didn't have leaders who were convinced and they had competencies and they collaborated, they were consistent, etc. I have to use myself as an example. But before me came even better examples, like Professor Olikoye Ransom Kuti, who was my boss. And, you know, everything was actually put out for me when I was minister. And I felt, oh, right, we are now on the right track. However, human beings being who they are, we did not factor in the fact that perhaps the leader would not be accessible for all the time and would not be available because he was the driver of the whole thing. Mm. And unfortunately, he was not available. He was ill. So, you know, that then plunged my team and I into a situation where nobody wanted change. The changes that were being proposed were, you know, they would get them to lose some of their benefits, which they were getting before I got there. So that, to cut a long story short, you know what would happen under such circumstances. So everything fell apart. And, you know, they could not wait to see the back of me. Having said that, why did I join ALG, and why did I want to look at the other side of the coin, citizenship? It's because I felt that at that time, if the citizens were better enlightened, they probably would have saved the situation. And if we had had advanced technological communication, which we have today, again, things would have been different. So definitely the situation is changing to the extent that when the people of conviction, of integrity, and compassion get into leadership position, all they have to do is to speak out and to let people know what they're doing and get the citizens behind them. Because now they have the opportunity to get citizens behind them. I can tell you that at that time, even to get my professional groups behind me was very, very tough. You know, that brings us to the issue of who will bail the cat. I think it's the citizens that will bail the cat. If the leaders know how to communicate their needs to them, you know. So, you know, with that's one thing I am trying to learn from you, actually. You know, that's why I joined the yes. So the language that you are using, you know, etc., we all need to learn them and be able to convince citizens of their own role in getting good leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Reverend, do you want to make some comments before we get the participants to come and share their views, and then we'll go back to another set of questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just very quickly, I think from Mommy, thank you so much. Indeed, I think, again, I go back to the price of time, like Mr. Suleiman said. We must give ourselves time. We keep building the story of the bamboo tree. You know, when you plant a bamboo tree and how long it takes, and you see nothing happening, but in fact, something is happening. And then all of a sudden, it shoots up to almost 9 feet. I believe what we have started is a path to change and a process that will bring about what we are looking for. The others, we've been so passive for long that it's difficult to be able to imagine that citizens will rise up. The person who spoke about respect, yes, we must challenge, we must be persistent. Yes, you may be attacked or, corrected for challenging an elder statesman, but we must do it in with respect and in love. And then you mentioned communication. We must teach it. It's not something that we assume that we know. How do we communicate with government leaders? There must be respect for authority, but at the same time, we must not have fear in order to engage them. And so we must teach the leaders also how to communicate effectively with citizens. So we have both what we have, the communication skills development for citizens, communication skills development and empowerment for leaders, and then emotional and cultural intelligence is very important. I think what happens, just like the last speaker was, before Mommy spoke, was explaining, is that we have leaders who are not able to control their emotions when they are challenged. And this is also a learning curve. Those are my comments for now. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. Jumoke, over to you.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to call on Mrs. Olushola Shonuga and Mr. I believe Abraham. Also, they were students of the Citizens Responsibility course to just also speak on how this is impacting their engagement. And I also want to add that we did a survey before the class on how the level of understanding of citizens' responsibility, and that number grew from 26% to 92.2% after the course. So we do assume that a lot of people know, but not even the technical aspect of getting engaged and what really needs to be done. So this is very important for people to know how to get engaged, when to write letters, who their local government chairpersons are, and how they can really begin to influence policies. So that was part of the feedback we got. Mrs. Olushola, please go ahead. Mrs. Shonuga, Olushola Shonuga, please go ahead. I think you have about a minute or so.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Olushola Shonuga, and I was very, very. I've been listening to the ALS NLS series for a few months, introduced by a friend, a classmate of mine, and so I was quite interested in joining the course, and I really did enjoy the course, and it's challenged me to really think further about actually taking action. Most of us, we see things, we say things, but we don't do anything. So, so far since we started the course, immediately we finished the course, I'm already talking with other members of our group that for us to begin something regarding out of school children. Hopefully, we will take it as far as we can. But in saying this, I speaking with other people who have not been on a course like this, most people just don't see it. They don't see hope. They don't see any change possibly happen. So I really, identify with Pastor Itwa's question that, what can we really do, in practical terms? So I'm hoping that maybe further courses that we may do will really address how it will really get out there to people that we can do something, we really can do something, and how we can push back against the things that are the opposition that we are bound to get, which has made us docile so far. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more. Abundance, Mr. Abundance. You have a lot of background noise, Mr. Abundance. Can you lower that?
All right, sorry. Let's talk about. Are we good now?
No, there's still a lot of noise. If you maybe step away or turn off the radio or something.
Yeah, let me step out.
Okay. Okay, you're clear now. You can go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Yeah,
Go ahead. We can hear you.
yeah. From my own end, I would say it's a very big opportunity for me to be part of the students in the ALG course, and I learned a lot. Yeah, I learned a lot. But it's based on the fact that I always love community service. You know, I have been into community service for quite some time now, trying to impact the younger generation in my community where I grew up and all of that, you know. And I still gained some knowledge from the course we just concluded, because it gave me some insights of how to go about speaking, like getting to be in connection with the government and having your say with the government, you know. So I'll say I really got impacted with this particular course. While for the out of school children, I would say I have been working on that for quite a long time now, and this is just like an avenue for me to expand or make it grow to another level. Yeah. So I would say that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to take any more? That's enough.
We can take one more and then I'll share some thoughts in response. Yeah, we can take one or two more.
Mrs. Beatrice Yusufu.
Good evening, everyone, and God bless you for a wonderful work you are doing. I want to appreciate the president and everyone that make this program a blessing to every one of us. I think I've been on this platform since January, and the platform has been a blessing to me. The program we just concluded has really given me a mind shift about the government in Nigeria. I'm a kind of person that believes that there is nothing we can do about the government of this nation. Nothing will change. They only put people that they love there. But this cause has really changed my mind about Nigeria and the government. That me as a person, I can do a lot to bring change, even to what is happening in Nigeria. I've been doing an initiative for widow for the past 6 years. And in this program, is bringing changes to every widow in Nigeria, as many that God has brought to my platform. You know, there are many areas that we expect government to do something, but we are not seeing them doing it. So we as agents of change starts from us. And that is why I took up that initiative 6 years ago. If every one of us, we do that, we take up an initiative, by the time we start it, government will also see to it. And individual will join hands with us to get it to the top. I'm planning, and I know, because God has brought me to your midst, there will be an inclusion that will also enable widows to get something good from the government, especially the aged widow. So this platform, the citizen responsibility, has broadened my understanding about how I can get my initiative more empowered and reach out to more people. I also want to say thank you to Mr. Tayo for the program of today. It's so wide. I don't think it can be covered in a day program. And therefore, I've learned a lot from here as well. So therefore, every one of us, let us keep on being an agent of change to our community, to Nigeria, and to the world as a whole. I want to say thank you and God bless you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Once again, do we have any other comment holding before I?
I
Okay.
think you can continue, maybe
Yes.
once we start taking questions.
Yes, let me just say this to the comments you've all had, and I'll just kind of give you the capsules. Someone talked about can-do attitude, and that's very important. If we're going to be responsible, ethical, accountable citizen leaders, we must have a can-do attitude. And there are teachings on that. And our goal at the School of Leadership and Governance is to ensure that we empower you with tools, enlighten you, and continue to support you. And we thank those groups, concerned citizens who have indicated their interest to follow through with the out-of-school children's situation. We've posted some reports, and that's the other thing that I also heard from the comments is a mind shift, And it's important to understand that word mind shift. Even we're told that we can only be transformed by the renewing of our mind. As much as the narrative in the past years have been bad, I want to encourage all of us to begin to have a mind shift and to have an imagination that things can be better, number one. Number two, we have to have a vision for a better Nigeria. We have to have the vision to know that we as citizens, when empowered, can boldly act and change will come. It will be challenging for us to be educated, empowered, and enlightened, and yet don't have the faith to believe that there can be change. And then I had the word broaden. Our goal is to broaden your knowledge. We know most of you have certain knowledge of what to do, but we want to broaden it in the context of how to be effective and efficient. And so that we are bound together by shared values. And then when a core group of citizen corps begin to move, just like an army begins to move and advance, I think we can cover territories by bringing change at local government, state government, and federal government. And then I had Mr. Lawrence Lemchi Abundant said, in my community. I think that's a slogan that is very effective. Let's be concerned by our community. It's your community. Don't give it away to elected officials. It is your community. It is my community. Wherever your residents of local government is, it is your community. And so be passionate about it. Be aware of things going around. No, we were taught by Mr. Kunle Lawal, Electoral College, that the minimum allocation, the lowest allocation that goes to an LGA is about 137 million naira per month. And the highest is about 587 million naira per month. That's federal allocation. What about other resources that they gain from that local government? And we're not aware of how they spend it. So we must demand responses to actions of our local government officials, state officials, federal ministry and department and agencies. Thank you very much. One of the things I have here is how to be a responsible citizen in my community. And that's why I like what Mr. Abundant said. Number one, decide which causes you and your community care about. That means you as an individual, just like the last speaker said, you must engage a people group for which you are passionate about that cause. She's passionate about the causes of widows, and she has taken it. And from there, then we identify the skills and knowledge that are within this widows group that can be leveraged to bring about change to them. We start from what they have. In actual fact, I am told that the word education in Latin means taking what you know, what's inside of you, and adding to it to expand your knowledge. So everything must start from what is inside, what is in that community, what is in that group, the widows group, what are the skills, the strengths, the talents that they have. And it's called the asset-based community development approach. Next, you must mobilize like-minded can-do citizens who are interested in this cause with you. And that's very important. You must identify those that are like-minded, both in the community and outside of the community. Then all of you must come together and develop a plan of action with specific targets and specific timeline. And then you engage community stakeholders which could be corporations, elected officials, you could be traditional groups or traditional leaders. And then lastly, you begin to communicate your vision while you share your vision, and then you garner resources to implement your action plan. And then you communicate your activities and progress, measure your impact, and scale up your activities. So that's how to be responsible as a citizen in your community, in my community. One of the things I loved much about the course was at our first module, we had Dr. Fatima, who came to share with us as a guest speaker how she identified the need with her sister, and they began to pursue it. And today, she's an icon and global figure in that particular course, not only from the community in the northern part of Nigeria, but now they are spreading around and they're being called to share the best practices they've learned and how things work from other countries in Africa.
And as far as Afghanistan, and also they are impacting 30,000 lives a year.
Right.
30,000. 2 women got up and saw a need and took action. 6 years later, they are impacting 30,000 lives a year. So we have two
of Nigeria. Yeah.
Yes, and they are now in 14 countries in the Sahel. 14. 2 women got up. So we have Sister Deswa, and then we also have Auntie Fumi Tomori.
Okay.
Their hands were up.
Please go ahead.
Maybe you can take those 2 questions together.
Yes, okay.
I don't see, I think Auntie Deswa may have dropped off. Oh, Auntie
No, I'm
Adesua,
back.
okay,
I'm back.
go ahead.
Yes, I'm back.
Please go ahead
Yeah.
with your question, and then we'll have Mrs. Auntie Fumi Tomori.
Well, I wouldn't really call it a question, but it's anyway, let me just go ahead. Thank you very much, Reverend. I really appreciate all what you've talked about. The questions Pastor Itwa asked, the how and the, whatever, which way forward. I think we've all touched on it. And it's something we all need to reinforce in our immediate environment. And I said foundation, the home. We still have to look into that. The unfortunate thing is the parents who are supposed to teach the children don't know. And you can't give what you don't have. Most of them don't know. Most of them are too busy looking for money. So the other way is to catch them young in schools, primary schools, secondary schools, So if they have this foundational knowledge, knowing that they should have a purpose, they should have a drive, they should have a dream, something that drives them, I think that will help a lot for the society, and they cannot pass it on to the parents. They cannot enlighten the parents, And there was something the young man talked about, people not listening or not being able to ask questions or whatever. I think there's a saying that says, if a child washes his hands, he can eat with the elders. There's a cultural thing which we cannot throw away. It's been with us, though it has to be changed gradually. So if you prove yourself that you're worth your onions, the elders will listen to you. And your body language matters a lot. The way you present your question or whatever you want to say to them matters a lot. So we must have that in mind. I think we've lost that cultural value, which the elders still have. They hold strongly to it and they don't take it lightly. If you talk to them the way they feel it's not right. So the way you present your communication, the way you communicate your points to them is very important. Those are the points I want to make. And us as individuals, we must have passion for something in our environment. I will take myself as an example. Wherever I go, I make sure that compound is clean, the estate is clean. People say, we're tired of talking. I use my money to get cleaners to clean even the street in front. People throw garbage. Sometimes I go out and stand there and say, no, go back with your garbage or tie it properly before you throw it inside the dustbin. So there are things we must learn. Some people just don't know. And they don't see the reason. It's the understanding why you need to do certain things in a particular way. So I think that is the most important thing, because there are things that we do that boomerang. It turns about if we throw garbage anyhow, rats are going to come, rats will come into your house, cockroaches come to your house, So those are the points I just want to make. Thank you very much. I really appreciate ALJ for what you're doing. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Auntie T, please go ahead. I've asked you to unmute. Mrs. Tomori, okay. Mrs. Tomori, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her, or is it just me?
No, we cannot hear her. We
Okay.
cannot hear her, so.
Okay. Okay, maybe she'll try again, but the mic is on. There's no audio coming through.
All right, in the meantime, let me just respond to the comments. And there are comments, and so we're all learning. Iron sharpens iron. I go back to what Mr. Suleiman said, which has been echoed again. See something, say something, and take an action. Take an action. I mean, one single person can influence another. That's why we call it citizen leaders. Citizens who are committed to influence others in the path of, solving a problem. And our last speaker also talked about must have passion for something in your environment. Let's start with that. Like Pastor said, before we go to the high field, David said, when the lion came, I killed the lion. When the bear came, and then he faced the Goliath. Before we face the Goliath leaders of our environment, let's start from our neighborhood. Must have passion for something in your environment. And once you have that passion will move you to action. And once you start acting, others will join. And so it is very important. I also like the fact that we must also be all taught in effective communication at a higher level, at a community level, how we engage. It's not just our leaders that get irritated when they are challenged by or confronted by questions or issues. It is because it's a cultural value. And it's not to change the cultural value, but it's to see how to adapt that cultural value in the context of development. Things have changed. We cannot continue to use the same old format of cultural values and say it must be done this way. We must be adaptable and changeable. And so cultural intelligence and emotional intelligence go hand in hand. And then to the issue of education, I think one of the things that I have seen in my research in developed countries is that we must place emphasis on pre-kindergarten and kindergarten education. And we must integrate national values from that level, and it will grow with the children. So really, it is true. The phrase that we must catch them young is not just catching them young. We must start young, because children learn. They are more learned citizens at their childhood ages than at their adult ages. They become educated at their adult ages, but they are better learners at childhood. And research has proven that. So we must teach this same citizen responsibility. Who is a citizen? We must use edutainment, that is education and entertainment mixed together, to teach these young children from pre-kindergarten, kindergarten level, and then other levels. And then in a matter of time, we will build a movement of young men and young women that are committed, compassionate, and with living with convictions and core values to see change in the society on the path to greatness.
Thank you, sir. So we're going to take one more question, and then I'll call on Pastor Sonny. We will start to close. And also the call to action is ALG's initiative. We'll end with that and how you can get involved in these initiatives. Mr. Bayo, you had your hand up. That would be the last question that we... Okay, Auntie T, you're back. So Auntie, can you go ahead with your comments, and then we'll take Mr. Bayo, please. And then we'll start to close with Pastor Sonny, and then bring back Mr. President. Auntie, please go ahead with your comment on the question.
Yeah, I can. Hello.
Do you wait 1 second, Mr. Bayo? Let's have Mrs. Tomori. She had her hand up and she wasn't able to speak earlier on, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Auntie, please go ahead. Okay, maybe there's something with her audio. Go ahead, Mr. Bayo. There must be something wrong with her audio. Auntie, maybe you can put it in the chat and then I'll read your question.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Bayo, please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm particularly delighted to be on the platform this evening. As I was earlier busy, tied up, but having been here, I guess I would have missed a lot not being here. So I'm very grateful I'm here. So my question is, I've listened to the speaker and he's quite eloquent and oratory, able to deliver what we need to do. But somewhere along the line of his comments, I think in reply to a question, he was talking about the government being in place and an 8-point agenda that the government has put in place. But I think if we study the situation in Nigeria very well, we would observe that millions of Nigerians are not happy with the government. And that's, coming from the election. We don't see or we don't perceive that there's justice. And I'm asking, I'm really curious. I want to know, can we build anything solid without justice? If we talk about economies and all that from today till tomorrow, is it possible to even have anything solid built in our society without justice? And the second question quickly is that, what's the role of institutions, in shaping culture and values? We are talking about individual leaders and all that, but I think that must really stem from institutions like our religious institutions, our schools and all that. How do they come? What role do they play in ensuring that, we have more responsible citizens, just as ALG is already doing? Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor T, and then we'll have
Yeah.
Pastor Sunny. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let me start from your last question on the role of institutions in ensuring we have a high level of citizen responsibility. Indeed, you've actually addressed it. That's the cornerstone. We have different levels. We have the individual levels, we have the organizational level, we have the institutional level, and then we have the national level. So if you look at it, we have 5 levels, like we said. We have the home level. We have, first of all, you are a citizen and you belong to a family. So that's the family level. And at the family level, we must ensure that we adopt national values. I think our first challenge that we need to find a solution to is that we have a national orientation agency that has been ineffective for years, and there's so much money allocated to it. And so one thing we need to do is mobilize citizens and express our concerns about the ineffectiveness of the National Orientation Agency to provide us with a framework of the national values that all Nigerians must adopt, irrespective of our ethnic groups, our religious base, and then also initiate a policy that these national values must not only be taught at every level, educational level, in faith-based environment, in corporate environment with onboarding of employees. When this is done, then we have a critical mass of understanding the national values of the nation. So nobody would have an excuse, not even leaders. And so that's number one. So that's the role of institutions. Institutions have a critical role to play, but we must first agree. We must hold accountable the National Orientation Agency to foster and establish a national value framework, which we must all abide by. And values don't change. They are statements of truths that don't change. They live within, they are timeless. So that's important. Now, can we do anything without justice? Actually, even from my faith, it is important that we have justice. We cannot, and I think we're still falling short. Again, I'll tell you, the rule of law index for Nigeria is very low. And that means we do not have appropriate, appropriate management of the rule of law in Nigeria. And that is a big question that I cannot delve into, but it's a good question. We cannot have proper development and proper growth and pathway to greatness without justice. Justice is important, and that brings us to having an effective rule of law, a robust, comprehensive rule of law, development, application, and monitoring. It's my
Thank you.
response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And if I can just add to that, so it's almost like a chicken before the egg. What comes first? If we have accountable and engaged citizens in nation building, then justice also will become a byproduct of our efforts, right? So, Pastor Sonny, if you have comments, and then we can round off our call on Mr. President, and we can talk about some of the initiatives ALG has going on right now. Pastor Sonny. Okay. All right. While we are waiting for Pastor Sonny, I'm going to read. Okay, go ahead, Pastor Sonny.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jumoke. Pastor Tayo, thank you very much for the brilliant presentation. You know, for me, I want to appreciate the work that Jumoke, particularly you and Pastor Tayo have done, and with all the people. We keep interrogating the very question of how are we going to do what we want to do. That is a critical question, and that is what we really need people to get involved with. My passion is really holding government accountable to what they say they will do. And how do we do that? You know, there's a popular saying that says, a child that says his mother won't sleep, the child also will not sleep. So if government say we will not rest, we will not have light, we will not have security, we'll also give them no rest. So citizens should be up in arms. I mean, government, this president from day one made a pronouncement that shook the whole country. And I hear people saying we should give them time to settle down, you know, they're just coming in, they are new government. I said the man didn't know that he wanted to settle down when he threw all of us into complete wahala, where I was spending 1,000 naira before I had to now spend 2,500 or 3,000. So he's not going to rest. And I mean, that's what we should do. I want to say this as part of the solution as we are going forward. There are those of us here that are very smart, that are very social media savvy. You will see what happened with the Naira Marley boy. What's that boy? Mohbad. Because of social media, look at the attention it got. The government, senators, police, everybody got involved. So we can use a lot of that space. People know how to make things trend. I don't know, maybe you see a pothole that's a danger or something, you want to make it trend. Because this government, it looks as if, you know, something doesn't trend and become a national issue, they will not pay attention to it. So part of what we should be doing is how do we make these things trend, whatever is an issue for us. Because if you, I mean, once we try to call traditional media, I wanted to do a protest in my estate to do about something. None of them came. TV did not come, newspaper did not come. Somebody say, if you know what is good for you, just video it yourself and post it on social media. And if you have influencers that you can give it to help you push it. So for all of us on this platform, what can we do? Look, we have television in our hands. The phone we are holding is so powerful, and we can make things happen if we know how to push it. And so that's the bit I want to add. We can organize ourselves and push the agenda we want the government to take care of for us. Because if we wait for the government to tell us what they want to do, they are never going to put timelines. I like what the Minister of Interior is doing. When he said he would clear the passport issue within 2 weeks, he set a timeline for himself. Very good. That's what we should do for every other thing we want to see happen. And when they are not doing it, we should not keep quiet. Thank you very much, Pastor T. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. And just to add to your point, the Mohbad issue is just proof of citizen engagement. It's not only in Nigeria, it's global. They had in New York, they had in the UK, and going back to other nations that have really effected changes is mobilization of citizens' engagement. Pastor T always talks about the Arab Spring. We saw the Berlin Wall come down. Even in Nigeria, it was market women back in the 60s or before that effected change from their engagement. They came together because taxes were high, and they came together and formed a group to protest this high taxation that they had. The colonial masters had, it was in the 50s, the colonial masters at that time had no choice but to lower the taxes because of the engagement of the citizens. So we must continue. And I just want to also encourage all of us that we're doing our part and we'll continue to do our part. Pastor T, we have time, but we can't relent. We must persist. We must never give up. We must continue to push and then be the influencers, right? We may not have social media platform, but we have networks. We have our family, we have our friends, we have our old alumni platforms that we belong to, that we must continue to push this information until it gets to every corner. And I want to read Auntie T's, Auntie Fumi's comment. She put it in the chat. How can we carry this message in this lecture to larger public via town hall meetings, organizing school meetings, professional association on related topics? We must have stronger visibility. Courses are very good and educative, but we must engage on public campaign. So this is also where we can start to make a difference, right? Taking this to your neighborhood, taking this to your organization, taking this to your place of work, and really trying to advocate for us to be more engaged as citizens to promote this cause. And if you can translate to another language where we don't have to pay for it, raise your hand. And then we have course materials that you can translate. We can create videos, short videos, messages. There's a lot trending on TikTok. We can have all this kind of campaigns, short campaigns that we create, that we can begin to use to spread the message. Thank you for that. And we'll call on Mr. President, and then we can share some of the initiatives that ALG is also working on and how you can get involved.
Well, just to thank Reverend Tayo for that very, very educative and detailed presentation on what we've tried to do at CRC and what the options are for having a very good government. And I want to thank him also for his responses to the various comments and questions, and also to thank him and the rest of the team for the awesome job that they are doing on ALG and the Nigerian Leadership Series, and trying to put together, hopefully, what will be a movement that will cause provoke some kind of change in attitude and change in the way governance has been done in Nigeria. We're also working on the community development projects that is being championed by Shade Fashedemi. So we're waiting for the outcomes of that and the roadmap that we're going to use to engage that. And therefore we can use that for further community engagement as part of what we're doing. And also Jumoke is working on how to work with the diaspora to make sure we can get the best out of the diaspora in hooking up Nigeria and making Nigeria great again, which is what we truly believe in. Let me reiterate that we are non-partisan. We don't belong to any political party. We're just on the part of Nigeria and to ensure that there's good governance in Nigeria going forward and the right people are in the right place. That is the battle, that is the struggle, and that is the challenge we're taking up, and working some kind of process to ensure that happens. So I want to thank all those who made contributions also. The contributions are very, very valuable. I want to thank all those who have attended and all those who attended the course at Solaj. We also want to wish all the teachers worldwide a happy Teachers' Day. You're the ones that teach us. There's nobody that has become anything that didn't have a teacher to teach them, either formally or informally, starting even from the households and having our parents be our first teachers. We appreciate you all. We thank you, and we thank all those who are going to be teachers And we only pray that everybody will teach their respective students. All right. Thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of the evening and a wonderful weekend ahead. God bless you all.
God
Thank
bless.
you. And we
Thank
put
you,
a
everyone.
link to the form. If you want to get engaged with ALG, there's a link in the group chat. Please go ahead and fill that. You can also send us an email, members@africaleadershipgroup.org, and we'll share with you on all the different initiatives that we're working on and how you can get involved. We have a mentorship program coming up. It's IOI Real Responsible, Ethical, Accountable Leaders program that we'll be starting that in January, but we're taking applications right now for the mentors. So there's a lot that we're working on. There's also Tri-Africa Empowerment Foundation initiative, end of year outreach. In this time and in this season where food prices have escalated, we don't even know what it's going to be like in January. We want to feed our neighbor, we want to feed our nation. So there's an information session on Saturday. We'll be talking about how you can get involved. We'll send that also to you. We'll send the information to you. And Pastor mentioned the community, local government community initiative. There's also, you can get involved with that. And then there are committees, health committees, infrastructure committee, EEE committee, and fundraising committee. We can't do any of this without raising funds. So there are so many ways that you can get involved with really moving the needle towards where we need to get to. So thank you, everyone. We would the link is in the group chat. So please click on that link and then share this video as well so that more people have information on how they as citizens are empowered in nation building.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you all. Have a good evening and God bless you.
God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much, Jumoke. Thank you. Thank you for checking on Sister Tolu. God bless you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no sound.
Sound from where?
No, someone was put in the chat that there's no sound, and that's because we are all quiet now, saying goodbyes.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye. Thank you all. Thank you.
Shadi, when am I getting our document?
Sir, we'll need to, we'll need to.
I thought by now we'd have started moving and doing things.
We have started moving. We're moving. Trust us, we're working on it.
All right.
Yes.
And you have a group from the CRC too that is willing to help out. So I'll introduce you to them.
Through. So we're covered. Pastor, just we're covered. We're keeping you up to date, Pastor.
Okay. I'm waiting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. And that group, Jumoke, please make them available for Shade, the group that you mentioned just now.
Yes, they have actually started working. I think I mentioned it to her, so they are coming up with a roadmap, and then they would meet, set up a meeting for them to meet.
Okay, excellent.
All right. So
once we can get that community project going, I think we'd have made a significant progress.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So we're going to end the call now.
I think you can end the call.
Okay. Good night, everyone. God bless you.